Aloha everybody and welcome to the extra video of Mega Man ZX. And I know, ladies and gentlemen, I know this video is about 5 or 6 months late. Better late than never though, right? So we're finally getting to this, and we spent the whole entire playthrough of Mega Man ZX playing the game as Vent, and this video will be focusing on the second playable character, the female Aile. And the reason I'm not doing a second playthrough of ZX is because Aile isn't really all that drastically different from Vent. Aside from being a different gender and a few little minor differences that I'm going to be talking about, it's pretty much the same game. You still play a character who is employed with Jiro Express, a character who lost their mother 10 years ago in a Maverick raid, and when you're en route to deliver another package, Mavericks attack you, and then you find yourself running into a whole bunch of Resistance members, and then Biometal Model X chooses you to become the new Mega Man. Although I guess in this case you're not really a Mega Man, you're more of a Mega Woman, but they still call you Mega Man, cause, Eventually you'll still run into Serpent, Prometheus, and Pandora. You will still merge the two biometal models, X and Z, in order to take on the 8 Pseudoroids and save the world from a big giant Maverick conspiracy, just as you did with Vent. The gameplay is exactly the same between the two characters, with a few minor differences. The few minor differences are not worth doing a second playthrough of, and so I'm just going to be going over them briefly in this video. For example, Aile can crawl around on the ground and climb up ladders faster than Vent can. But the one drawback to being Aile is that she takes a lot more knockback. When you get hit by enemies as Aile, you actually go a little bit farther than Vent would. And maybe that's the most noticeable thing, but even still, I had to look that up on the internet to even realize that there was a difference after playing as the two characters. So maybe I wasn't paying attention, but hey, I believe Vent also swims through water a little bit faster when he's in Model L form, but I could be wrong about that. But that's pretty much it. They do the exact same abilities no matter what biometal they've equipped. They still have the Z-Buster charges, the Saber Slashes, the Tornado moves with Model H and all that jazz. There is no difference. If you've played Mega Man ZX Advent, the sequel game, you'll know that there's a big difference between how Ash and Gray play between each other. But in the original Mega Man ZX, Vent and Aile, aside from those small little characteristics, don't really have any gameplay differences. Except for the side quests, because the side quests are actually a little bit different depending on which character you're playing as. Some side quests will be exactly the same. In fact, the majority of the body chip upgrade side quests that I talked about in a lot of the earlier parts, a lot of those are exactly the same between the two characters. However, there is one exception with the Ice Boots chip. When you're playing as Aile, in order to get the Ice Boots chip, you actually have to go to the residential district and meet this girl who has a dog. And she'll talk about how she has this mushroom that she lost in the forest, and it would be really great if you could find that mushroom for her. And so you go into Area A2, and then you find the mushroom, and then you bring it back to the girl, and she goes, "No, no, stupid. I didn't mean an actual mushroom, I meant my pet bird mushroom. I lost my pet bird. Go find my pet bird." So you go back to the forest, and it is, this bird is a little bit hard to catch because you actually have to run into it, and if it flies away, you'll have to go off screen and try again. But once you run into the green bird, that bird's name is Mushroom. You bring it to the little girl again, and that's pretty much the end of the quest. You basically just go back to the transporter, and then you get the Ice Boots. So this is a completely different method of getting the Ice Boots chip that it is from Vent, and it's pretty much the only time that the chip side quests are different. Aile has a lot of different side quests in comparison to Vent. There's even one little cool thing you can do with Aile that Vent can't do, where you can actually go into the Guardian headquarters, go to the 3rd floor and the last door on the right, and actually talk to one of the Resistance members until they offer a change of clothes for your character, which will change your sprite colors. Now this only affects your human costume. This won't affect Model ZX, this won't affect any of the biometals themselves. But you can actually change the colors of Aile so that you're not just walking around in blue with brown hair. You could have a green jacket with pink hair. You could have a white jacket with yellow hair. You could have a black jacket with grayish, blackish hair. It always seems to be randomized sometimes. I've tried this quest numerous times, and it always seems to change how the colors go. I think there's a predetermined set of colors, but yeah, you can actually change Aile's colors, whereas Vent has no option like that at all. This is exclusive to Aile, so yeah, how about that? Even though you run into the same 8 Pseudoroids, even though you go through the exact same levels, and pretty much the game plays out exactly like it did with Vent, a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the story scenes do change a little bit when you're playing as Aile. I would say Vent focuses on a lot of the backstory of Mega Man ZX, talking about Dr. Weil, talking more about CL and all of that jazz. Whereas Aile's playthrough tends to focus more on the characters in this game. Like, when you actually go to Lurare stage and you find the data, when you're playing as Vent, you just find data that, oh, they found Model W, and that's pretty much it. But when you're playing as Aile, the data reveals more. It actually reveals that Serpent, the leader of Slither Incorporated, was actually a Resistance member before he was the head of this big, giant corporation, right? And it was the power of Model W that turned him insane and turned him into a bad guy. They go to a bigger length to make Serpent feel a little bit more sympathetic, and they also try to imply that he is definitely not in control. They don't even really mention Ragnarok or Dr. Weil in the Aile playthrough. Instead, Pandora and Prometheus keep alluding to the fact that because Aile can transform into a biometal just like all of they can, they're part of a game of destiny, if you will, and they all have to fight each other to see which one is the best, and they have to obey the will of him, the one who created Model W. Who is this he? Who is this him? Well, they don't really reveal it in this game, but these are the small little foreshadowing, the small little hints of what's to come with the sequel game Mega Man ZX Advent. So it is interesting that Vent's playthrough focuses more on the past, Aile's playthrough focuses more on the future and the upcoming, foreshadowing and stuff, and I thought that was kind of interesting. They also go to a little bit of length to explain that Jiro has actually had the biometal way longer than he said he had. When you're with Vent, he implies that he just got the power, like, pretty much, it just equipped to him that day when they got attacked. But when you're Aile, he'll actually admit that he's had the power a long, long time. So some unique little dialogue changes there. Again, though, the plot plays out exactly the same. You will still fight the exact same bosses. You still end up beating Serpent. And then Aile learns how her biometal has helped her save the world and fight for everlasting peace. And, all that jazz. I would actually recommend playing Mega Man ZX yourself as Aile in order to see all of these minor story differences, because it makes a second playthrough kind of interesting when you're getting new exposition and different reactions to a lot of the bosses and how they talk to you, She also fights that optional boss, Omega, and I forgot to mention what happens after you defeat Omega. Well, after we beat him, we got that mysterious rock, right? Well, you have to beat the game, you have to defeat Serpent, and then you have to save over your save file so that you will go back to the Guardian HQ. The final mission will still be available to replay whenever you want. But once you've beaten Serpent and you have the cleared save data on record, you go into the data room and you hand the mysterious rock to the computer guy, and he will make it into a new biometal to play as. That's right, you get one new biometal to play as after the game is beaten, and this is Model O. Model O has the exact same appearance of Omega. It makes you look like the Mega Man Zero sprite from the Zero series, so it makes you feel like you're playing, Zero. And when you start out, you just feel like ZX again, You can do Z Saber Slashes, you can charge up your Buster, you can dash, and that's pretty much it. And at first, you don't really see what the big deal is about Model O, but then you realize that Model O actually has an overdrive feature. And just like with all the other biometals, this gives you a whole shitload of new abilities and new things to pull out, and oh my god, Model O is so freaking great. He can create a giant wave of electricity by holding down and slashing Y. When you fire the Z-Buster, you don't charge up your shot. You just immediately can shoot 3 super powerful shots in a row when you're in overdrive mode. When you jump and do a spinning slash in overdrive mode, you create all of these ice particle effect arrows that shoot in every friggin' direction and can attack people that way. When you hold down on the control pad and push R, you do a ground pound effect, which causes all of these meteors to fly out of the ground and attack everything around you. And finally, you can hold up and then push the attack button in order to do a flaming Shoryuken type attack like Zero used to do all the time. This gives you all kinds of elemental abilities, because you have the electric wave, you have the fire Shoryuken, and you have the ice particles that you can fling everywhere. And Omega's overdrive doesn't really rely on weapon energy. This is unlimited for as long as you want. The weapon energy never drains. There is no weapon energy to drain. You can keep doing these abilities as often as you want, but you do gotta remember one little thing. When you get hit as Model O, your overdrive mode turns off. So every time you take a hit, you have to remember to push A again in order to activate overdrive mode again. But even still, having all of these different abilities at your disposal is freaking great. Being able to play as the Mega Man Zero sprite of Zero, in this case Omega, is fantastic. And having all these awesome abilities and this kick-ass version of Zero is amazingly fun. It's just a shame, though, that in order to play this version of Zero, in order to play Model O, you basically have to have beaten the game. You can't unlock this unless you have beaten the final boss in the game. And there's no way to New Game Plus this whole thing as Model O, unless you're using an action replay or something. But it's still a pretty cool feature. I like the fact that you can play as Omega. I think that's pretty fantastic, and now I finally talked about it. Finally done Mega Man ZX, ladies and gentlemen. I don't really have too much more to say about this game. I'm done with ZX. No one will ever pester me about the extra video ever again. But that's really all I have to cover. Coming up next, I shall finally be starting the Mega Man Legends series, and ZX Advent I will get to sometime, not for a while, but I promise one day I'll get to ZX Advent. But yeah, until then, toodles.